What's in the if this works, I'll be pissed folder?
Long story. That's what's in that folder. Okay. Okay, get rid of the users as well. Also, another thing, that was shitty. Bear with me, I have not done Ruby in a week and a half. So, that's why Celine is here.
Hi, Celine.
Blatant lies.
Exactly. You know, that doesn't exist anymore, so get rid of it. Okay. So, I just called it Beer Recorder, and this is also called Finished because I just cleared out the one that I did for the Coyotes. Okay, so let's make. What should we make first? Actually, let's go with that. What do you guys think we should make first? Our models or our migrations?
Migration. Models.
It doesn't matter, is the answer. So,
You're all
yeah, basically. What is generate migration, right?
see, we don't have these commands.
No?
No, we may as well take a look at them.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
this is something that's built into the rake file.
Yeah, so, hey, let's talk about rake files.
Yeah, we're so
Yes.
bad.
Thank you.
Alright, so here's a rake file. What does any of this mean? No one knows. Actually, the truth is, once you get the hang of it, once you start using rake files and rake commands, all of this really does start to make a lot of sense. Because in reality, it's just Ruby, and it's just telling you what commands do what and what you have available to you. Have you guys heard of like rake YOLO?
Yeah.
DB
Okay.
Regular,
Yeah, DB YOLO. That
Migrate.
yeah, it drops, creates, migrates, and seeds.
If you take a look at this file, you can recognize like a lot of really familiar Ruby data types.
Right.
I think there are just probably a few commands that you're unfamiliar with at this point. Like, what is env bracket name? Who knows? It's a mystery. But you guys will get more familiar with that kind of stuff.
Our rake file doesn't have generate in it.
It doesn't? Okay. All right. So what generate does? Ooh, YOLO is there. Generate is really, really, really simple. It just takes, and I'll you know what? I'll just do one, and then I'll tell you what it does. Did you have to do like camelizing the name of the files and stuff?
Yeah.
All right. So that good. I'm glad they're still doing that. And that's just trying to hit home with like what generate is actually going to do for you. You won't have to know how to do that stuff ever again. So there's that. So for generating a migration, all you have to do is rake generate : migration, and then name. You want to call it create, and then let's just make users. Create users, and then enter.
Convention is to name the migration after the single table that you're adding to it. Convention is also to only add one table per migration.
Yep.
I found.
All right. So what that did is it gave us this huge wild timestamp right there. Can anyone see that? If you can't, I apologize. There's no way to zoom that. But the way that migrations work is you get a timestamp, which is just a big series of numbers, and then that's how your config and rake files know which migrations to do and in what sequence.
Would it be helpful at all to look at the rake file, the code that generates the migration?
Sure. Here we go. Rake generate. It's all that.
Yeah. So basically, there's just some code that comes up with the current time and adds whatever name you put in there to it to create the file name. And then, I don't know if they have it written as system in here, but basically it tells the system to create a new file.
I think it's.
And that naming too at the time at the beginning of it, that's also convention. I don't know why though.
The what?
The having the date and time at the beginning of the migration file.
That's just so it knows in what sequence to run the files.
Okay.
So when you want to add a column to your migration or your table, you just make a new migration file, and then you can do like def change. Do you know what the change method is, or have you used it?
Yeah.
It's a better question. Okay, you just put add column in that, and it'll alter your current schema without destroying your tables. So stuff like that. Like it just that's why the timestamp is there. And yeah, when you generate a migration, it does all this for you, and then it gives you that timestamp. So pretty easy, super handy.
So So it won't run every file in there at a time. It'll only run. Like, how does it know which ones to run?
It'll run all of them. It'll run all of them unless you have two of the same and one is more recent than the next. It'll only run the most recent,
According to the timestamp.
according to the timestamp at the beginning.
So at this point, we're still making those migration files on our own.
That makes sense. But starting on Monday, you won't. So, just letting you know. Unless things have changed in 6 weeks, I doubt that you'll still be making them on your own. So I think it'd be, I don't know, what do you think, Celine? I think it's beneficial to get to know this syntax early,
Yeah, for sure.
because starting on Monday, you guys will have Sinatra as well, and then it'll just be Active Record, Sinatra all at the same time, and it's a little overwhelming. Which is why I started doing this, because when I was in your position, and I started Phase 2, it was massively overwhelming. There's so much to do, so much to learn, so many files to keep track of, and it's wild. So just started doing this to try, give just at least a little bit of exposure before you hit it running on Monday.
Yeah.
And please, at any time, if something does not make sense, if you think I'm a total idiot, say it, and we'll address it then. I might throw something at you if you use that latter one, but it's okay.
All
All right, so let's make the next one. What else? What other migration do we need?
Kegs.
I was so happy. Okay, so now we have our kegs migration. We can check it. There it is. Look at that. It's pretty. Okay, and beers.
Yes.
Understand why those paper towels are up there.
Yeah, so those paper towels are up there because the screw for that projector is missing. So our solution was to put paper towels there.
Yeah, that's about right.
It's yeah, we're not taught about hardware. So okay, now we have our 3 migrations. And now what? What should we do now?
Model.
Models. Guess how easy that is.
Is it really gonna create models?
So,
Has to know what to put in there.
So this is just replacing what we've been doing.
What you've been doing is teaching you how the things work.
Right?
And what you're going to do is just the best thing ever because everything does it for you.
It seems so much better.
It is. It really is.
you know what the best part about it is to
I never
me
wanted to.
is that someone wrote this code. Like someone was like, man, I don't want to have to make all of these models.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write some code that does it for me.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like for instance, this skeleton that you're going to be given is not any like standardized Sinatra active record skeleton. Like you can make a Sinatra program with one file. This whole skeleton was provided to us. I think John made it. At one point, he made the reg file. He was like, "Yeah, generating stuff is going to be important. Having all of this like separation of concerns is really important." So he made this skeleton for us, so we can kind of get used to it. Because it's prepping you for Rails is really what it's doing. Because when you start Rails, Rails there's so much going on. So, yeah, so this is going to make our model. And notice it's user singular, right? That's what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hey, buddy.
What's on that?
We have another helper. Yeah, so when you generate your model, you're going to name it singular. But when you create your migration, it's going to be create underscore and then the pluralized version of your model, the name of your model.
Using more underscores if you have more than one word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like table names, right? Table names are snake case.
Yep.
Do we have to use create underscore something, or can we just use it?
For your migration, you have to say create.
For the model you have to say.
Yeah. For your model, you just have to make it just the name of like what you want the model to be and singular. And when you go to run your creation and migration rake tasks, it's going to look in your model folder and your migration folder for like if you have a create users migration, it's going to look in your model for a user.rb. That's what it's going to look for. And if you don't have that, if the naming is off by like one letter, by one capitalized letter, everything's going to get fucked up. You're not going to know why. The error's not going to make sense. And then everything's going to be terrible. So naming conventions are important, which is probably why you've been doing that for a couple days now. Yeah.
So if we had a model that was spelled differently than user and we wanted to create a model user or just want to create a new one, it would try and find that one? Is that what you were saying?
Say that again?
Okay. We have a model that isn't user,
Uh-huh.
but we wanted to create a user model. It wouldn't just create a user model for us?
At this point, no.
Okay.
I think you can add that into your rake task. I'm not really sure if this one does it, but it's not too terrible to add that into your rake task, truthfully. So
Yeah, it's just Ruby code.
yeah, so get used to like play around with your rake file because there's a lot of really powerful and fun stuff that you can do with it, and it tends to run commands much faster than if you're doing if you're trying to do big database migration work in your terminal. You can just write a rake task for it, and it'll go quickly and with one command. So play around with that stuff. It's important. So what's our next model that we need? Keg. Okay, and then beer. Yeah, great. So go up here. Hey, look at that. And it tells you to remember to create a migration. So this is assuming that you make your model first. Great. So now we have our models and migrations set up. Let's add what we talked about. So yeah, it provides you with this change method. Yeah.
If you wanted to do validations, would you do that before you seed, or would you do that like right after you create the model?
We'll get to that a little later.
Okay.
But the cool thing about validations, since they're in your models, it really doesn't have a lot to do with your migrations. So you can change them whenever you want, and you don't have to do anything with your database. So, but I'll show that more in a little bit. So we're at here's our users table. What do I need to put here? Does anyone know? Create table what?
Whatever it needs or whatever.
Users. Right, because that's our table name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Exactly. Do stuff. And then t.string, right? Symbol name. Yeah? Make sense? Because that's just gonna make. I mean, it's just a SQL command, but it's in Ruby. So make this row a string and have it called name. You know, varchar 64 or whatever the hell it is. And I don't know how many of you hate SQL commands, but I do. So not having to do them is fantastic. What's the next thing that we need? T.date. Why date? That's the one. Jesus, I totally forgot about that freaking birthday. Okay. Yeah. Can't believe we put birthday. Okay.
You don't want the cops to shut it down.
Yeah, I don't want the cops to shut down my private party because I wasn't carding people. Okay, so kegs. What do we need? That's it, right? We're done with our migration?
Yes.
Super. Does that look good to everyone?
Yeah.
Great. Looks good to me too. Celine?
Looks beautiful.
Thank you. Just making sure I'm not totally fucking everything up. Okay. Kegs. What did kegs have? Thank you. Did I miss that, or was that a test? You don't know. Totally missed it. Celine, where you at?
T.more.
That's it.
Right.
T dot what?
That's it.
Is that it? What else do we need? There we go.
You have to have timestamps and everything. It's just a good idea.
It's just a good idea. There's a lot of organization stuff that you can do with timestamps. Sometimes you don't need it for a join table, but in general, it's good to have it. What don't we have here? ID.
Sorry there.
What? Yeah. Exactly. So we don't need to put an ID because Active Record does that for us, which is handy but also very restrictive because you can't alter that row or column on your table. It is static. When you add a new item to your table, it is going to have an ID, and you can't change that ID because that is how Active Record finds that item.
I think you can change it with like a primary key, and then you can change the name by ID.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
So you can change it, and that's how. So ask that. What's your name?
Joe.
Ask Joe. He knows.
Joe knows.
You like you can do
Joe
a
knows.
custom ID right now, like t.id and change, like have your own algorithm to
Yeah, I don't remember where exactly it goes. But
I think it goes on like when you create the table,
Mhm.
it goes primary key
Yeah.
or something, not auto increment or equal to false or something like that.
Okay.
Before you even do T, right?
Yeah.
Right after you do chaos. Then you
Fair
put
enough.
them Right there.
We're all learning stuff. This is great. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do that right now, but I'm going to look into that. That's awesome. Okay, so we're good here, yeah? Okay. Beers. What do we need?
Create table here.
t.belongs
There are a lot of things going on.
belongs to.
There's integer.
Well, for kids.
See, I think you have to make it first, and then you can do. I guess like t.integer, and then user underscore ID,
Mhm.
and then t.integer keg underscore ID.
But if you did belongs to, it just makes us work.
Does it?
If you did
They're one and
belongs
the
to keg.
Is there a different command called like create join table for this?
No, sadly not.
There is actually. There is a command for create join table,
That's
but
why Celine's here.
it only creates join tables for has and belongs to many relationships.
Oh,
And
yeah.
In general, sort of general wisdom is to stray from using that association because inevitably you're going to want to add more to the join table later on. That we can either talk about that later, or it is also in the active record guides online, which are just beautifully written,
Yeah, the
engaging.
active record guides are great. And yeah, has and belongs to many is, I think it might be deprecated. So, like with the next iteration of active record, it's not going to be, you can't use it.
According to Mike Bush, he's been halfway lying to people about that. Like he's been under the impression for like 3 years that hasn't belongs to many is going to be deprecated.
Oh, okay.
And it hasn't been yet.
I
But
can't trust what anyone
I know,
tells me.
right? But essentially what he told me was like every time he has used it, he's wanted to change it later, and then you have to drop all of your tables and remigrate everything. And you may as well just start with an association that gives you more flexibility.
It's really redundant.
You have to add the you have to add the table anyway, so it's a
Right.
couple lines of code.
Mm.
Yeah, you may as well just put in those 3 extra lines of code and save yourself a headache later on, potentially.
All right. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate it. We all appreciate the knowledge bomb. So let's talk about beers. It's our join table. And so it has to reference things, right? And there are a number of ways that we can do that. And I heard a couple of people saying a couple of different things. And from what I heard, most of you were correct. You can do something like t.references and then put like user or something. But convention, at least for what I've been used to, and something that is more explicit, and what I feel personally more comfortable with doing, is just integer, and then user ID. And that's just putting user ID field on your table. It's not necessarily doing anything with it, it's just making it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Celine, is that what you usually do?
That is exactly what I usually do.
Cool.
Do you think it might have something to do with the principles of design that we want to keep any more information out of the database?
Yeah. Do you want to explain that?
You guys went over design in phase 1, right?
Right.
It's like the table has no business knowing what this ID reference is necessarily. That's up to our code to do later on. But we have the integer there for when we need it.
Cool. What else do we need?
Keg ID.
Great. So is everyone...
Timestamps. What did you last drink the beer?
How old is the beer?
For Christ's sake, people. All right. Our migrations are done. No.
We need some
Has anyone actually purchased Sublime?
I'm a good person.
I did.
Damn.
Sublime is awesome.
Some-
You're expecting no one to say anything.
No. I was expecting there to be about that number of people, and I have no shame that I have not yet bought it.
Employed.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I do. I finally got some money.
Is there any benefit to purchasing it?
You won't get a pop up,
You can.
and you're supporting your
Yeah.
favorite company.
Yeah, you can feel really warm and fuzzy inside for supporting software developers.
It's an awesome text editor.
It is an awesome text editor. It is very good. Let's move on. All right, so now. Oh, sorry. I promise I'm not a dick. Okay, so let's go to our models because our migrations are done. Yeah? Look at that. Look at how pretty those are. Okay, so now our model. This is kind of where things get interesting, right? This is where Active Record really starts to show its fanciness. So,
We made the user ID and the gig ID,
Mhm.
but we are not referencing them anywhere right now, right?
right. So, right now, we have 3 tables that don't know anything about each other. They're just 3 floating tables in your database. They have no connections in any way. They have names like user ID, keg ID, but those mean nothing. Those are just characters on that table. So let's put them together. I heard ramblings that no one knows about really associations, really? Okay, let's do some. What are some associations that you remember from, or relationships, rather?
One-to-one, one-to-many.
Right. So one-to-one, many-to-many, one-to-many, that stuff, many-to-many, many. So what is this relationship?
Many-to-many.
Exactly. Because, yeah, beers, or users have many kegs, kegs have many users. So what,
As many through leaders.
actually, let's start with user. So we're starting with user. What does user have? Beers. Right? Why beers? Why not just kegs? In the literal sense, yes. But in terms of Active Record, why didn't we just say kegs?
There's more than one user takes from one keg.
Right. So the reason that we didn't go straight to kegs is because it's a many-to-many relationship, right? So we have to have, there are going to be many users and many kegs, and they're going to be related in many different ways. Yeah? Users are going to have many kegs, kegs are going to have many users. So you can't just draw those tables together because Active Record is going to have no idea what you're talking about, right? So we can start with has many beers. That's where we should start because our join table is in between. And with associations, you have to step. It's not, you can't jump. You can't jump over your join table. You have to take steps, and then you have to go through things. Yeah? So we have has many beers. What do we do on this next line? We want a user to be associated with kegs somehow, but in what way? Yes. So what is this line going to look like?
Has many kegs, 3 beers.
Beers. Thank you. Yeah. So basically, when you have a through relationship, you don't have to do it like this, but it's standard, and you're going to want to because it makes life easier. You're going to take the line above it, and then you're going to say it has kegs through the line above it because it just keeps everything grouped. So what is through beer? What is this going to look for on the beer table? Or not, actually not in the beer table, the beer model. What is this going to look for? Yeah, it's going to look for the relationship in beer of keg. Yeah? Cool. Does that make sense to everyone? I heard a groan. Okay. If it doesn't, I am literally here to help. So if I am not, tell me to stop. I'm here to make your life a living hell. So I don't care if you learn things. No, I do. So ask. I just graduated, so I'm here because it would be beneficial. Yeah.
Is that also when this is when we put in our validations?
Yeah, and we'll get to that after we link everything up.
Okay.
Mr.
Validator.
Mr. Gung Ho, validator. But we'll get to that. That's good. Validations are very
I
important.
just don't want null data, man.
Oh no,
I'm so sick of that data.
validations are no guarantee of null data. We'll get to that too. Okay, so we are now in our keg model. What do we need here? Or actually, let's do our joint first. What do we need in beer?
One keg.
I heard a lot of belongs tos.
Calorie
Cute, very cute.
Belongs to users and
Belongs to what?
kegs.
Kegs or keg?
One keg and one user.
So when you're writing your active record associations and you want them to be singularly associated, you write it singular. It's just what it looks for, basically. So you're basically telling you're telling active record, you're telling your models that there's going to be one thing here. So instead of returning an array of something, you'll just get the object. Yeah? And then user, right?
Could you do keg, comma,
I don't know. You probably can. But I think in terms of convention, you don't want to.
No, the answer is no because I screwed that up.
Well, the answer is no. So, such silly questions are not welcome here. All right. So now this is all set up. So now when we go back to our user model, through beers, it's going to look for keg, which is there. So those are linked up. Hooray! Yay!
You need to do it the other way around? From the keg to the user?
Hmm?
You need to do it the other way around from the keg to the user?
What do you mean?
Like, a keg has many beers and has many users through beers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we get to the other side, the other end of our has many, it's pretty much just the reverse. So we've done this already. So what do we put here? Beers. Great. And then users. Great.
We have to write has many beers, can just one line has many users to be used, do that for us?
No.
Good question.
That is a great question. Each line, each association line, like I said, like I kind of mentioned earlier, is a step. So it can only go one step in association. So you have to make each step visible on each line. That makes sense? So when you have a many to many, or or a through relationship, I guess, just remember you're probably going to need 2 lines or more. Make sense? Cool. So we have stuff now. So now we can make things. Let's make things. What do I need to do first? That's a dumb question. I'm going to just make the thing. Unless I already had it. Yay! Alright, so now what?
So if you were to run migrate again, it wouldn't overwrite.
Let's see.
You grab something, I'll be right back.
So the way that Active Record works is it looks to see if those migrations have already been run. And it says, it looks at the timestamp, it says yes, and it doesn't do anything.
Okay. So if you had a new migration file, it doesn't run all. It just runs the new.
Just runs the most recent.
Okay.
Alright, so now, you guys, have you used Rake Console? Kind of?
When they give it to us.
When they give it to you. Makes sense. So, starting on Monday, you'll have Rake Console available to you all the time. So, it's the most handy of things. Have you guys still been using SQLite 3?
Yeah.
Great, you won't have to do that anymore. You're going to be using a thing called Postgres, which is it's a bit of a standard for when you want to deploy your app to Heroku. Heroku uses Postgres. It's just more of an environment database. It's still relational. It still uses SQL, but it's you don't have access to the file. So you can't find it anywhere in your project folder. You can access it, but the way that you want to access it is through Array Console through Active Record commands. So that it's a little different. If you've been relying on like going and finding your database file and then screwing around with it, doing like .schema or something, you won't necessarily be able to do that anymore. So now you're going to have to rely on Active Record. Make sense? Is that concerning to anyone in particular? If it is, that's normal. It was for me, but it gets a lot better. Sorry, I'm just looking for my water. I guess I don't have one. Okay, you guys. Okay, so now we can hop into Array Console. Takes a second. Yay! And in Array Console, since it's the IRB of your project, basically, you can interact with all the data that you have. But we have nothing. We have no seed. We just have a couple of tables and some models. And the models are essentially dormant right now because they're just not being used. We migrated. We didn't do anything with our models. And I had mentioned it earlier. You can change your associations and validations without dropping your database. So you probably want to if you change your associations, but in terms of validations, you don't have to. And we will get to them in just a few minutes. Let's make some stuff first.
So you would just migrate?
Yeah. Drop. You'd want to drop. Unless you want to make a whole bunch of new migration files.
So Array Console is nothing but IRB with the required files in that project.
Yep. You can do whatever you want in it as you would in IRB. So let's make a user. Let's do it in a seed file, just so it's easier, so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so let's make a user. Yeah. Celine.
Do you like beer?
You mind bringing that down?
Oh God! I was like, what is going on? Better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Sorry. Jesus. I thought something lit on fire. So what do we want to use here after user? Why create?
Because it's new and save.
So it makes a new and save it.
Yes. Cool. Good.
Sorry, a lot of people were talking at the same time. What were you saying yes to?
Create.
Okay.
Yeah. So user.create and user.new are two very different things, and it's not like, oh, now we have Active Record, now all we use is create. That's not true at all. New is still a very important command to use, and we'll get to those with validations. But for now, we'll use create. What do I need in here?
Name and birthday.
Celine. What is it? What do we call it? Birth date? Birthday. Jesus. Does anyone know the format that I need? Do you know, Celine?
For a date,
Year dash.
When are you born? No, that's rude.
August 26, 1985. I don't care.
1985.
Yeah.
So it's making it big. It's in like in the database or since date it says string.
Got it. All right. This is huge. Okay. We good on that? Let's
Definitely old enough to be drinking beer.
yes. Let's run it and see what happens. Invalid octet digit.
The date, like wrap it in the date.
Yeah, like date that new or something.
This is why we don't put complicated things on examples.
Yes. Sorry, delete birthday.
Yeah. So for now, I'm gonna delete birthday. I'm sorry. We can figure it out at the end. And now, well, actually, this is fine. What do I need to do now?
Drop the zero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but there was also a task called reset directly above yellow that did exactly the same thing.
That's not true. Now it's my turn to correct.
Oh,
Reset does not seed.
that's fair. No, that's a good point.
YOLO does if you set it up that
If you
way.
set it up that way.
Because
yeah.
YOLO is a command that you make. It's not going to come in a rake file.
No. Reset
Um,
does come in rake file though.
So look at that.
Just rename it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you can just rename it to. You can just rename reset to YOLO and then make it seed.
I thought we are creating the rake file.
You won't be creating it. You'll be given a rake file.
We can mess with
Who gives us the rake file?
Your instructor.
Okay.
Most challenges come with a Sinatra skeleton.
Yeah.
For the ones that don't, there's like a link somewhere where you can download it.
Will you send us the bill?
We're saying like, what do we-
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really easy.
Yeah. I mean, I can show you how to make it if you want to see how to make it.
So for the group, for your group project, did you make a rake file, or did you just use one that you did you just copy and paste?
I copied the Sinatra skeleton.
Yeah. Copy the Sinatra skeleton.
And added like, what's the word I'm looking for? Personalized it a little bit.
Because that's Celine. That's what Celine does. Okay. So as I was saying, YOLO also seeds. So we also added into our database Celine, and that's right there. So yeah, you can also with Postgres, it shows you all the things that it's doing. So it's really nice. You don't have to guess. It's not just some blank wait 1 second, see if it worked kind of thing. You'll see immediately if it worked or not. So we have Celine. Let's go and select Celine. Because why not? Okay, how do I select Celine? Does anyone know how to do that? Okay.
Just fine with the ID.
The ID is one, but we can find the name.
Okay. So I'm again hearing some smattered whispers. There are so many ways to find things with Active Record. And you can do find, which finds by ID, but Active Record also creates those find methods for you, like you were saying. So you could do find by name.
So for basically every instance variable that we have for an object, it will create a find by.
Yep. Isn't that amazing?
That's
It's fantastic. So look, so it returned Celine. And it only returned, another important thing to note, it returned the object, Celine. So if you do something like where, it'll find all of them. Every person with the name of Celine, which right now, yes, is one. But if we had a bunch, that where would return everything. And it would return an array of everything. If you do find, you have the object. So,
And only the first one that
and
matches.
yeah, and only the first instance that it finds.
So if you did user.where by name colon, that's when you could all.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a different syntax. I think it's name Celine.
There are a bunch of different syntaxes for where too.
And look at this. What does this mean? Does anyone know what this means? On the left, active record relation. So this isn't technically an array. Not technically. It doesn't exist anywhere. It's an active record relation object. So it has all the methods on array that you're used to, but it's not stored anywhere. It's generated every time you call one of these methods.
It has many of the same methods. I discovered the hard way that one of the small handful of methods that it doesn't support is sort by with a bang.
Really?
Yeah. Isn't that weird?
That is weird. That doesn't make any sense.
It's gonna make sense.
Well, I mean, it does make
Right,
sense, I
yeah,
suppose.
Yeah. But sort by without a bang obviously was. But
you
anyway,
other
yeah, the
ins-
point is
you
if
other
for some
example?
reason something's not working, just make sure that it's actually a method that runs on active record relation.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you call that to iterate?
Like, turn the object into an array?
Yeah, save as a variable, not to bang.
Let's try. Let's see.
X equals
Array.
user.
What is it? Yeah. So it saves the active record relation object. And then let's do it. Yeah, it does work. Look at that. That was an awesome idea.
Yeah.
Another. Could you not do that? I appreciate it. That's okay. So the what was I going to say? Does anyone know the underscore syntax? That just takes the last thing you typed in, your last command. So like instead of tapping up a bunch of times, you can just, if it's the last one, just do an underscore. Yeah. So now we have Celine. We have her in an array, but that's not super helpful. Even though Celine is great, let's do something else, or my computer will crash. Okay. So let's make a keg.